You are listening to the Global Slovakia podcast, sharing Slovakia's untold stories, hidden heritage, and cultural treasures with the world. As the United States prepares to celebrate 250 years of independence, we invite you to join us on an equally remarkable journey through the shared American-Slovak story, exploring the people, events, and unexpected connections that have linked Slovakia and America across the centuries. Today, we begin with an extraordinary figure whose life reads like an adventure novel. A man born in the Slovak lands who escaped Siberian exile, sailed across the Pacific, became known as the King of Madagascar, befriended Benjamin Franklin, corresponded with George Washington, and offered his services to the American Revolution. This is the story of Móric Beňovský, a Slovak at the birth of America. The King of Madagascar who helped America's revolution. As the United States celebrates its 250th anniversary, many Americans will reflect on the founding fathers who shaped the nation. Few, however, know the story of Móric Beňovský, an adventurer born in the lands of present-day Slovakia, whose path crossed those of Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and other figures of the American Revolution. Born in 1746 in the Kingdom of Hungary, on the territory of present-day Slovakia, Beňovský was a nobleman, soldier, explorer, author, and entrepreneur whose restless spirit carried him across Europe, Asia, Africa, and America. His remarkable journey would earn him the friendship of kings, queens, revolutionaries, and statesmen, and even the title of King of Kings in Madagascar. Yet his story began with family tragedy. When Beňovský was still a young man, his mother died, leaving behind 17 children. Bitter disputes over the family inheritance followed, and the young nobleman found himself entangled in lawsuits and conflict with his relatives. Facing the possibility of imprisonment, he fled the Kingdom of Hungary. His exile marked the beginning of a life unlike any other. In 1769, Beňovský joined the Polish resistance against Russian intervention in Poland. Captured by Russian forces, he was imprisoned and eventually exiled thousands of kilometers away to the remote Kamchatka Peninsula in eastern Siberia. For most men, this would have been the end of the story. For Beňovský, it was only the beginning. In 1771, he led a daring revolt among fellow prisoners, seized a ship, and escaped Kamchatka. What followed was an extraordinary voyage across the North Pacific, through Asia, and eventually to Europe. Arriving in France in 1772, he quickly captivated the French court with tales of adventure, survival, and discovery. King Louis XVI was impressed enough to appoint him a colonel and commission him to establish a French military and trading outpost on Madagascar. Beňovský threw himself into the project with characteristic energy. In 1776, local leaders in northeastern Madagascar elected him Ampanjakabe, King of Kings, a title reflecting the influence and respect he had gained among the island's communities. Although his Madagascar venture achieved mixed results, it made him famous across Europe. He was received by Queen Marie Antoinette, and Empress Maria Theresa later granted him the title of Count and an amnesty that allowed him to return home. But settled life did not suit him. His ambitions stretched far beyond Europe, and Madagascar continued to pull at his heartstrings. When French support for the colony began to fade, he started searching for new allies. That search would bring him into contact with one of the most important political movements of the 18th century, the birth of the United States. While in Paris, Beňovský developed a friendship with Benjamin Franklin, who was serving as the American envoy to France. Franklin became both a supporter and friend of Beňovský and his family. Through him, Beňovský gained access to the highest circles of the emerging American Republic. He also knew another famous revolutionary, Polish military leader Casimir Pulaski, who would later become a hero of the American War of Independence. Through Pulaski, Beňovský proposed an ambitious idea. Madagascar could serve as a strategic base for the American struggle against Britain. The proposal was submitted to the Continental Congress but ultimately rejected. But Beňovský's interest in the American cause did not end there. In 1779, he traveled to America and offered his services to the revolution. He fought under Pulaski's command during the Siege of Savannah. According to historical accounts, Pulaski died in Beňovský's presence after being mortally wounded in battle. After returning to Europe, Beňovský made another journey to the United States in 1782. Through Benjamin Franklin, he met George Washington and Martha Washington. Correspondence between Beňovský and Washington survives to this day, revealing his efforts to support American independence. In one proposal, he offered to recruit thousands of soldiers in Germany to aid the American cause. Washington and Secretary of War Benjamin Lincoln reportedly expressed appreciation for his plans, although by that stage of the war, peace negotiations were already underway, and the proposals were never implemented. What became of Count Móric Beňovský? Unable to secure lasting support from France, Austria, or the newly independent United States, Beňovský turned to Britain, which was never one to miss an opportunity to challenge its French rival. In 1785, he returned to Madagascar once again, this time backed by British interests seeking to strengthen Britain's influence on the island. There he began building the capital of his envisioned kingdom, a settlement called Mauritania, named after himself, Maurice in French and English. For a brief moment, it seemed his dream might succeed. It was not to last. Alarmed by his growing influence, the French government dispatched a secret military expedition to Madagascar. On May 23, 1786, French forces launched a surprise attack on Mauritania. Beňovský was killed in the fighting and buried on the island alongside two Russian companions who had remained with him since their escape from Kamchatka years earlier. His life ended far from the mountains of his birth, but his legacy remains extraordinary. Few people can claim to have escaped Siberian exile, sailed across the Pacific, earned the friendship of Benjamin Franklin, corresponded with George Washington, and been proclaimed King of Kings on Madagascar. Yet perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Móric Beňovský's story is that it reminds us how early the connections between the Slovak lands and America began. As the United States celebrates 250 years of independence, Beňovský stands as one of the first known people from the territory of present-day Slovakia to engage directly with the leaders of the young republic. Long before the great waves of Slovak immigration that would help build American cities, industries, churches, and communities, Beňovský was already crossing oceans and forging relationships with the men who shaped a new nation. His story is a reminder that the ties between Slovakia and the United States are older than many realize, rooted not only in migration, but also in shared ideals of courage, opportunity, perseverance, and the pursuit of new horizons. It is a legacy worth remembering as we celebrate 250 years of the American story. As America marks 250 years of independence, stories like Beňovský's remind us that the connections between Slovakia and the United States reach much further back than most people realize. Long before the great waves of Slovak immigration, long before the steel mills of Pittsburgh and the churches of Cleveland, one remarkable adventurer from the Slovak lands was already forging relationships with the leaders of a young republic and participating in the events that shaped the modern world. His story reminds us that the history of Slovakia and America is not only a story of migration. It is also a story of courage, curiosity, ambition, and a willingness to venture beyond the horizon. Thank you for listening to the Global Slovakia podcast. Join us throughout our special series, 250 Years of the American Slovak Story, as we uncover the people and moments that connected our two nations across generations. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep discovering Slovakia.